Welcome to this installment of Real World Employment Law, where we talk about real-life cases and issues in employment law that impact the workplace. I'm Declan Leonard. I'm the managing partner here at Berenzweig Leonard, and I also head up the employment practice here.
Good afternoon, Declan. I'm Nick Johnson. I'm a partner here at Berenzweig Leonard, and I also work in our firm's employment practice.
And Nick, once again, we're here in the studios of the BL Media Group, which is here in our offices in Tysons. We've got our great producer over here, producer extraordinaire, Todd Castleberry. That's right, and we're all fitting this in. Hey, listen, we've had a busy Friday, but in truth, we all had nice lunches that we just came back from. Shout out to Tim and Lisa over at Eddie V's. Wasn't sure. I left before they had, let's just say, the next round, okay? And that's all I'm going to say. But anyways, listen, today we're going to be discussing what we try to do with real world employment law is discuss, issues that really matter in the workplace. We're not looking to get so deep into the weeds. We want these to be issues that people can talk about and that they can be practically used within a company, within the workplace, so that they improve the workplace. In today's case, I think, Nick, people are going to be a little bit surprised by the result of it. So let's jump into this.
Yeah. So there was a case, a recent case that's been getting a lot of attention, and it's been getting attention for how companies handle complaints of workplace discrimination, complaints of workplace harassment. Yeah. And so the case came from the Fourth Circuit. And so the Fourth Circuit, it's the Court of Appeals, the Federal Court of Appeals for Virginia, Maryland, and some other surrounding jurisdictions. And so it's our
pretty high-profile circuit, yeah.
Absolutely, yes. And so in that case, it was a case that involved an employee that worked at a nearby Best Buy. It was a Best Buy located in Maryland. And in that case, the employee, who is an African-American female, she alleges in that case that a coworker made a fairly insensitive and offensive racist and sexist joke in front of coworkers.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Nick, we're in the midst of an incredibly racially charged and really it's kind of a reckoning for the country in a lot of ways in terms of how race relations go and how they go from here on out. But I think what was said in this one, and of course we're not going to repeat it here, but what was said in this one would have been horrible on any standards any day.
Right. There was an offensive racial slur that was used in the joke, and not surprisingly, the joke did not go over well. There were a group of employees. One of the employees made this offensive joke, this racist and sexist joke, and not surprisingly, a number of employees were offended by it, and one employee in particular went to HR. And raised a complaint to HR and basically said that, this type of behavior is unacceptable, that, in my opinion, this creates a hostile work environment.
And it seems like the person who made this very, very off-color joke, the person who made the joke, it seems like they understood what they were doing, because I think right before they gave the punchline, which was really the most offensive part of it, they said to everyone, there were a bunch of employees that were hanging out, they were hanging around, probably on a break or whatever, and the employee said, before they said the punchline, they said, do you promise not to call HR on me? So, I mean, the employee had to have known what they were doing. It's just so,
right.
It's crazy how insensitive and, frankly, I hate to say it, but sometimes stupid people can be in the workplace. Right.
No, absolutely. Well, so HR did what they're required to do. They investigated this and they looked into it, and they took action. And so what HR did was they went to the employee that made this offensive joke, and they issued a final written warning. Now, they didn't terminate the employee, but they made it very clear that this behavior was not tolerated and that this was basically the last straw, that if you do this or commit any other workplace infraction, you're going to be terminated. And by all indications, at least from what the case indicated, the improper behavior, the harassment, the discrimination, the types of insensitive jokes that were being made, they stopped. Okay. And so HR, that's what they decided to do. Well, the employee in the case felt that the company didn't do enough. The employee, who was ultimately the plaintiff, felt that the company could have done more, and ultimately filed a lawsuit in federal court claiming that this type of joke created a hostile work environment.
So this employee who was in the audience to hear this joke, African-American female, and not only was this the worst word you can use against African Americans, but also had like a really offensive sexual aspect to the joke too. It was a real double whammy. This employee's just sitting there saying, well, wait a second, what does it take to get fired? So this employee basically said, did the company do enough? I don't think so. That's why I'm suing. So I guess that's the big question for the court was, look, issuing a final warning, but not docking pay, not demoting the employee who told the joke, not firing the employee, was that enough? So I guess that's the big question. And it's real world employment law. Who won?
So in this case, the company won. So the company won. The court said that the company's response doesn't have to be perfect, but in this situation, the company's response was the right one because they said they took steps to reasonably stop this harassment. And so what happened in that case was the company filed a motion to dismiss at the lower court level. The court dismissed it. They ruled for the company. It actually got appealed up to the Fourth Circuit, and just recently the Fourth Circuit affirmed that decision with the win for the company.
So the person who told the offensive joke here, this was a coworker. This was not somebody who was a manager or a supervisor of the employee who made the complaint. Would it have made a difference if this was a Best Buy supervisor or manager?
Absolutely. And the court went out of its way to kind of make that point that this analysis is much different when you're talking about coworkers. If it was a supervisor, you have a completely different analysis under the law. And so here, because it was a coworker that was making that statement, and because Best Buy, because they took action, because they investigated this, and they took remedial steps to make sure that this would stop by way of issuing this final warning, the court said that's enough. It's, in these types of employment cases, I mean, you and I, we litigate these things all the time. And it's not uncommon for plaintiffs to want the company to do more or to expect the company to do more.
Yes.
And I think, the Fourth Circuit said, we as judges who are analyzing these things, our job is not to be super personnel decision makers. We're not here to second guess decisions that companies make. As long as they are reasonable and reasonably designed to stop harassment, to stop discrimination, that's going to be okay by us, and we're not going to second guess it.
So there's a lot of discretion that companies have. Now again, the whole analysis is what a company doing not just a slap on the wrist, but is it like something that's going to be effective to stop the conduct? So a lot of things short of actually firing somebody could take place. You could demote somebody. You could suspend them without pay. Now here they just did a final warning, but a final warning is a final warning. Again, we are at will employment, so final warning is sometimes meaningless because you can be fired anyways, even without the final warning. Yeah. One of the things that I think Best Buy that came out in the case, one of the things that came out is that Best Buy was not real good about communicating what it did to the offending employee to the one who made the complaint. So the one who made the complaint, apparently, I think according to the case, was making inquiries to HR. And why does that matter, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it goes to, basically expectations. When an employee files a complaint with HR, I mean, that's a significant step. I mean, that's a significant, action taken by an employee. And I think as an employee, the human element in it wants to know that, hey, you're being taken seriously.
Yes.
And that you understand that you work at a place that does not tolerate this stuff. And, at least in the business clients that we're advising, we always encourage them, make sure you circle back and let the employee know, here's what we've done. Here's why, we take these so seriously. And let the employee know that, hey, this is the steps that we have done to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And so, I mean, I think this case is a valuable lesson for
very much so
employers to understand. Yes. You have to take these complaints seriously.
Yes, key takeaways from the beginning of it to the end, the key takeaways in terms of taking it seriously, making sure that you've got an EEO, anti-discrimination, anti-harassment policy in your handbook. That better be updated. We have new laws in Virginia. We have new federal laws as a result of some recent decisions. Make sure all the protected classifications are in there. Make sure you have your anti-retaliation provisions in there. And make sure that you have, when you say in your handbook who they should go to, make sure it's not just one person, because that person may be very much involved in the complaint. So that's the first thing.
Absolutely.
What beyond that should they do?
Training. training. I mean, because, a lot of these employment agreements are things that employees receive at the beginning of employment that they don't really look at, once they're in and doing their day-to-day.
Yeah, they collect us, yeah.
We always recommend that, you should be doing training on a regular basis so that you're reminding, not only your managers, but your workforce about these protections and how best to handle these types of complaints.
Yeah. So bottom line, companies, take these complaints from your employees seriously, communicate effectively about like what you're going to do. And, that could be the difference between liability and no liability. So this was a great case. Another good real world employment law. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for the opportunity. It was great.